Hello, everybody. Welcome to your second to last day of Ignite. So I am Dr. Mascarino, productivity coach at Elevate, and we have.
Hi, guys. I'm Christine Stowell, agent of Keller Williams Elevate.
She's an awesome agent at Keller Williams. Thank you for helping me teach
Absolutely.
today. So today we are going to be talking about getting to the close. So the last two sessions we covered making and receiving offers and the negotiation tactics. And today we're going to move our focus onto the sales process after the offer. So this session is about getting to a successful close because it's true that not all deals make it to the end. So the best tactic is to be prepared and have the mindset of navigating the process successfully for your client. So before we get started though, I just want to take a moment and you guys can unmute yourselves. I just want to see kind of what you guys want to get out of this session. And that way, if we don't answer something during, if we don't answer something during the presentation, we can definitely make sure that we talk about it at the end. So feel free to unmute yourselves and share what you're kind of hoping to gain from the session.
How about asking for reviews?
Asking for reviews, love it, okay. I'm gonna write these down. Did you have one, Heather?
Yeah, maybe better understanding the timeline of like what needs to happen and when.
Yeah.
Especially during that lull.
Yeah. Anyone else before we kind of keep going? Okay, well, and if something that, if you have a, question, you obviously know that you can always, ask. Okay, so real estate transactions aren't particularly trouble-free. It's a strenuous and trying time that requires all the attention and effort that you can command. So as we know, getting a lead doesn't make the person your client. I'm sure you know that.
Not at all.
And getting under contract doesn't mean closing a deal or getting paid. I always say, and I don't know if you agree or not, but for me, I would say the deal starts once it goes under contract. It's when the real work begins, because there's a lot of points within that time from contract to close where a deal can go haywire or something can actually go wrong.
Yeah. So, I have a board in my office. So I track my numbers. I'll probably sell 16, 17 million of my own this year.
Awesome.
And I track my numbers really closely, but part of that is a board where I have a dry erase board with my pending deals on it. And then I move, so I'm superstitious as well. So then I have another board, which is I know it's going to close. So on my dry erase board, I usually wait until after inspection. And then on some properties, I'll wait until after appraisal. And then on some properties, I'll even wait until if I'm a little concerned about financing or something until clear to close, to move them to the official board. Because there is so many things that can just go haywire, especially this past year, 2 years when things were crazy, and thank God they're settling down. But I mean, anything could go haywire, from a bad inspection, even if you have an inspection for knowledge only, to an appraisal, even if you have an appraisal gap, to a lot of cold feet we experienced in the past 2 years. So I mean, it's really, this timeline is really that delicate process. And when we talk about somebody mentioned asking for referrals, or is that what they said? So when we talk about that, this is your time to show yourself, is during this timeline. This is the time when you can really be the rock star, be the hero, and get those referrals down the road.
Absolutely. And that's so 100% true, because this is kind of the time where you're doing the hardest work and you're showing your client, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that this gets to the close. And sometimes you have to be very creative because certain things come up and you have to be creative. So, I'm sure most of us have bought or sold our own homes. And as we know, there's a lot of people that kind of work together to making the closing happen. So as a realtor and then your co-op realtor, your conductors, and you're coordinating all the people and tasks that are gonna occur between the contract and the closing. So it's also very high time stress for your client. It's probably, as a client, when you're buying or selling your home, you're extremely stressed. So it's very important that you're communicating very well with them through this process. But then that you're also communicating with the lenders, title and everything so that you're always on top of what's happening, so that you can kind of be more proactive than reactive when things come up.
Because there's nothing worse than being reactive. And unfortunately, I think a lot of times it's like more of the agent that like will cause some of the issues in the transaction. And I hate to say that, but the more prepared you are, the more knowledgeable you are of the transaction. You can be ahead of it. And also I think setting realistic expectations
Yeah.
with your client the entire way through. So that they're not surprised by anything.
Absolutely. Okay, so we're gonna begin, if everyone can turn to the participant guide, and go to the, timeline page in your participant guide. So I think to make it easier, we're gonna just split up into our own market centers, and we're gonna kind of fill out this timeline. Okay, so we're gonna go from contract to close, and we're gonna fill out the timeline as if we were a buyer, and we're going to kind of mark all the deadlines that occur in transaction. So, Karen or whoever the host, can you set like 5 minutes on the timer, and then we will reconvene in 5 minutes and kind of go over what we came up with?
You got it. We're gonna have to set it on the phone though, because I don't know how to do it on.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just, if you just wanna like set, okay, she's setting the time, the 5 minutes, so let's talk with our market centers about the timeline, and then we'll reconvene. will share. Hello, is everyone ready to kind of share what they came up with their timeline?
Time's up.
Um, living or legacy, do you want to share what you guys kind of came up with?
Go ahead, Legacy.
So we just had for a contract to close, we start with a contract and then go to inspection, appraisals, and negotiations.
Okay. Living,
Yeah, we kind of got granular and I'm trying to read so notify the lender and the title company of send them a copy of the contract within the first week. These are all within the first week. Then send the signed contract to your buyer or seller. What does that say next?
EMD.
Order, oh yeah, make sure the earnest money is turned in the first week. Inspections are ordered and done in the first week usually, and apply for the loan. That's all week 1. And then week 2, inspections, negotiation. And then resolve the inspection requests if there are any. And then we have what? The appraisals ordered usually in the second week or third week. Ask for the utilities or forward the utility information. And also we added notify the sellers that if it's your seller, make sure that they know that the title company is going to send somebody out to survey their land, to look at their property, find the pins, make sure there's no encroachments, because often they don't tell us that when they're coming.
I love that. You guys got
Very thorough.
yeah, that's extremely thorough. We kind of, mine is a few steps because yours was more thorough. We kind of came up with the same thing. I'm gonna let Christine share kind of a great nugget that she shared with us.
So we had all of the same ones as you. The biggest thing that we had on there was making a formal loan application. And the reason why I put that is really like one of your first couple steps, like it should happen right with earnest money and ordering the inspection, is because in a market like we have today, the rates are changing so quickly. Example is today,
I think
the rates are going up by 75 basis points. So what that means is that if the rate is at 7 today, by the time things are closed out, it'll be at 7.75. Why that's important is because, I mean, that's like if you're buying like a $500,000 house, that's like a $500-600 difference in payment. So when they make loan application, they're locking the rate. So this means that they're locking like their payment and all of that. What you don't want to have happen is to go through all of this other stuff only to find out that this buyer can no longer afford the house. So as we see a lot of changes in interest rates, good and bad, we want to make sure in today's market that they're locking that rate ASAP.
absolutely. Does anyone have anything to add
Or question.
or question? Okay, so we're gonna talk about some common interaction points and questions to always kind of be thinking about throughout the process. So honestly, communication is key throughout the entire transaction process. You want to communicate deadlines, in my opinion, even before your buyer goes under contract. These are kind of things that like you want to do during the buyer's consultation, so they have an idea of, okay, once I go under contract, what's coming up. You want to communicate the contract to title, lending, any other parties involved. You want to make sure, just like she said, that the buyer is communicating with the lender that they're locked into their rate. There's going to be no surprises at the end of that. And then you want to make sure that you're recommending, you've probably already chosen a title company, but if not, you're recommending title companies, inspectors, insurance agents. Remember, this is your time to look like the biggest value to your client and that you're looking like an expert. So don't leave them alone and say, okay, you know, you got to find an insurance agent, you got to find an inspector. Make sure that you're the one that's giving them all these referrals because you're their expert. So you're going to schedule and communicate the inspections with the listing agent, and then you're going to be sending any amendments, inspection reports and things like that to title and lending. So just some things to kind of ask yourself, you know, as you're going through the process. A big thing, and I actually had to deal with it. One of the questions is, when am I reminding the buyers to not make big purchases before you go under contract?
I've had to do that with my own cousin. Yeah, or open any credit cards, even at like Levin, which was like my experience, like,
Oh.
we get it, they wanna buy furniture and like schedule book things, but like, they should be like strapped, like not making any expenses during this period, big expenses.
Absolutely. And then, yeah, I had the scariest situation happen with that, but all went good. So make sure you're communicating things like that. And again, I think before you close, because you're consulting your client as you're, you know, looking at houses and things like that and during your consultation. So.
And not to like go back to like the rate right now changing, but like, because it is much higher than it was a year ago. Just like putting it in perspective, if they can afford $1,000 payment, let's say the payment's $1,000. If they can afford that $1,000 payment, and then they go open up a Levin credit card, and now they're purchasing a couch on there, and now they have another monthly expense. They may not be able to afford that payment tomorrow because they just opened up that line of credit, which one, hurt them, and two, now they've accumulated more debt. And now that they have more debt, they can't afford this house per se. So that's like a really, especially with the changing environment we're in.
Absolutely. Communicating holidays that might delay the process, or just keeping them in mind, you know, knowing like, oh, okay, we're really close to Christmas, or we're really close to Thanksgiving, people are gonna be off, and just knowing how to be proactive to that. Negotiating the inspection report and then communicating that information. And setting the expectation, you know, as the buyer's agent with that listing agent, like, hey, we have our inspection on Tuesday. We'll likely get the report, you know, later that day or that morning, but we'll make sure that we get back to you by X time. Like setting that expectation so that the listing agent, one, isn't counting you like 2 minutes after the inspection on, hey, how'd that go? And then two, letting them know like, hey, I will get back to you in a timely fashion, don't worry, you know, and just setting that expectation with them that this is when I will be getting back to you.
And setting that expectation with the buyer. So when the buyer is in the inspection and when they're booking the inspection, when you're talking about the contract of the inspection, I think it's really important to set like, what is a realistic ask for on a house? So like when I'm talking and when we're at the inspection, I'm always kind of repeating structural, mechanical, health and safety. If it doesn't fall into those categories, there's a really good chance the seller's not going to repair it. And as an agent, the one thing you don't want to do is send a listing agent an epic list of like all of these repairs from like, oh, well, there's a small piece missing in the siding, like, okay, well, that might be maintenance and something they could do on their own. We're really sticking to those like bigger pieces of it and setting that expectation to your buyer from the beginning. So they're not coming to you and saying like, hey, I noticed there's like a paint chip in this wall and I really need that like fixed. Like, no, you're buying a used home, you know, like,
Yep.
structural, mechanical help.
And I think like she nailed that. You want to have that conversation very early on, not when you're at the inspection, because you want them to know going into the inspection, like, hey, we're not nitpicking everything. Things are going to come up in every single inspection. So these are the things that we want to pay close attention to.
And partnering with an inspector that is going to be able to say like, okay, like this is just general maintenance, and like talking them through like, this is maintenance versus like having the furnace service. Like if the furnace is 2018, okay, you should probably just service it yourself when you buy the home, versus if the furnace is like 2000, you may want to have the seller do it because there could be other issues with it. But finding out that line and having an inspector that you can rely on, who's not only going to coach your buyer properly, but who's also going to coach you properly as
Yeah.
well.
And honestly, like if you're a newer agent, you don't have inspectors, talk to some agents in the market center or something, and people will refer the inspectors that you work with. But go out on some inspections and like good inspectors will let you follow them around and really learn the process and go over and explain things to you. Because that way, it's like the more knowledgeable you can get when you're showing houses, the more knowledgeable you are, and you can have better conversations with your clients too. So I went on, like, I think going on inspections is important.
I still like, I'll probably sell over 50 properties this year, and I'm still on like every
Mhm.
single inspection, because it's a learning experience.
It is, and honestly, like, if you're not there, something could go wrong, or like, the worst is having something big communicated to you when you're not there, and you're like, oh, I wish I was there because I don't really grasp this or get this. Or-
Yeah, or even like things like, I guess like a decent example would be like effervescence in a basement wall. Well, in Lakewood, you're probably gonna see a lot of them because they are over 100 years old, and a basement is essentially a hole in the ground. Like, I have a basement, that's what it is. And so over time, you're going to probably see effervescence, but like, my favorite, I feel like.
There's.
Yes, yes, but there's another word that's like exactly like that, that means something. But like, seeing like that coming through a basement wall, it could be nothing, and it could just be like the house is old, you're gonna see that anyways. Versus like, okay, this person has active water damage, and like, we recommend now having like a foundation specialist or a basement company. Like, that's kind of like a good example. Like,
Absolutely.
you're gonna see this in Lakewood, you're gonna see this in West Park, in Shaker, and Cleveland Heights, like, you're gonna see that. But like, if it's more, like, okay, like, this is a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just gonna say, like, as a buyer's agent, are there agents who don't go on inspections?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Only because, like, to me, how do you even have a conversation with your?
That's how I
buyer
do it.
if you're not doing it?
or how do you even negotiate the deal?
Right.
If you don't
Yeah.
fully understand it yourself.
Absolutely. And if it can't be used, someone from your team or something, especially, but I mean, yeah, go to your inspection.
Blows my mind.
And if I can make it on every inspection with like my volume and 2 little kids at home, like,
You can do it.
anybody can do it. It's not always the most fun,
I
but it's part of your job, and you can actually get in a lot of trouble.
was gonna say, what if something goes wrong and you're not?
Right, absolutely. If something goes wrong with the house, yes, absolutely. Okay, so then when do I touch, did you have another question? Okay, and then when to touch base with the lender, title company, or listing agent? Honestly, you should be touching base with the lenders, title company, listing agents, like on a weekly basis, whether it's an email, a phone call, whatever it is, like during that transaction process. Put it in your calendar, and just make sure that you're keeping in touch with them. Because, especially with the lender, like, you want to know where in the process they are, are you getting a clear to close, all those, like, just make sure you're staying in touch weekly.
Because it also gives you a reason to touch base with your client. So example, hey, I hear that they got the appraisal back, everything's good, they're submitting you for a final review. Like, it's something like just like you want to touch base with like your sphere regularly, you want to touch base with your client throughout the process regularly. You don't want to leave them floating out there in the dark,
Yeah,
wondering what's happening. So the more you're like, hey, I just want to let you know, even if it's like, hey, I talked to lender and title and I don't have any updates today, but they assured me everything's going good. And I just wanted to give you that extra peace of mind that we're on the right track. Do you have any questions for me? And then that is like, you're kind of like keeping them at ease,
yeah,
but also being that hero that they can then refer to their.
absolutely, because they're gonna remember that, and they're like, wow, she kept me informed throughout the entire process. And remember, they are more stressed, like, even if they're not reaching out to us, someone that has just bought a home or someone that's selling a home, they're way more stressed than we can even think. So giving them those weekly updates does give them peace of mind that, okay, everything's going good, everything's going as planned, the buyer has their loan application, or, so just making sure you're communicating with everyone and then with your client.
And I
I
think
think
that
that I'm wondering.
No,
right,
right,
especially with like the buyer on the financial side, I think sometimes like that's scary to like go through like and have a loan officer like basically like look at everything about you kind of thing. So just like letting them know, because I think the ball does get dropped there with the buyer sometimes, like just giving them that extra peace of mind, like, hey, we're looking good, it's okay, don't go buy a Ferrari, but we're good, like, then you're like, in a good place.
And that's a great way to plug, don't buy anything.
Yeah.
Once we're moving them out, tell them like, after they move to the house, after the inspection, like, okay, now there's gonna be a wall.
Yeah.
There's not gonna be a wall.
I do that too.
Yes,
So
Yeah.
that's, that's what happens.
Right.
yep. You're still getting the house, like everything's still fine, yep.
You're not gonna see me as much, but you'll still hear from me and I'll still check in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so documentation points. So there's going to be certain things that come up during your transaction where you're going to have to decide if it's communication. Am I gonna call the agent and let them know this, or is this a document that needs creating? So to whom and from what is the document going? What's the best pathway? So again, is it an email, is it a phone call, or is this an actual document? What's the best plan for follow-up? And then, so I'm gonna give an example because I think it's the best way to go through this. So let's say you had a possession date 2 weeks after closing, but now the sellers are like, hey, they can actually move in at closing day because we're gonna get into our house earlier. So that's gonna be a document, right? You're going to do an addendum to the possession date.
Mhm.
addendum. Yeah, and so are there templates? There actually is a template for that, for that document, so you don't have to go in and create your own blank addendum.
And it's an easy template too, like it'll auto-populate and you don't have to like go back.
Type
and do
everything
other things.
in, yes, or on the flip side, let's say, you need to take 3 more weeks of possession because the house is not gonna be ready. There's a document for that as well, and what's great about the possession date document is it literally lists everything out for the buyers and sellers. And it kind of really does protect the sellers and buyers should anything happen during that possession time. So,
I have real quick, like.
no, this is
A real
why I
life
like it.
example that happened, so I sold a house like, let's say 5 years ago in Avon Lake. The buyers really wanted it was from our house, it was like an entertainment center, I think it was in the basement. And the sellers were like, that's fine. Well, it came time to like them to move and they closed on the house and I never got anything in writing. My sellers were like, well, we didn't know what to do because we didn't sign anything, so we just like loaded it into the like moving truck. And I'm like, well, actually, I never heard anything either. So I'm like, don't worry about it. Like, you're fine. Like, they never came back. Like, and this was like during negotiating when it was like a time when like if they really wanted it, I thought it would have been somewhere.
Yeah,
So I was like, they must not have wanted it. You're fine. Never assume anything because you think, yeah, that's me and you. Or you and me, like, and so, they moved, and then I got a call from the listing agent, like, or buying agent in tears about how and this was like a $5,000 piece of furniture, and about how they really wanted it and blah, blah, blah. And like, she kind of got real weird on me, like, this job's just so hard and blah, blah, blah. So I call our broker, who was Lauren Dabowski at the time, and I'm like, I don't know what to do, like, here's what's going on, like, it wasn't in the contract. So she just asked me, was it in the contract? And I said, well, no, it wasn't in the contract. She's like, well, there you go. If it's not in the contract, it doesn't exist. And I think that's such a valuable
Yes.
lesson I learned. And then I had to deal with like the buying agent's broker and like the buying agent calling me and wanted to splitting the money of like, and I'm like, I'm not splitting the money with you. It's $2,500.
yeah,
Like,
like the contract.
it's not in the contract. You didn't do your job and get this in the contract. My sellers didn't know what to do. They didn't want to leave a huge piece of furniture for your buyer to have to deal with. So they thought they were doing a service taking it. I'm like, no, if it's not in the contract, it doesn't exist. So remember that with possession, remember that with like any furniture. We don't work for a living, so don't try to negotiate furniture.
Yeah.
What happens if it's in the MLS broker notes, but it's not in the contract with that?
It's not in the contract.
That's
so
in
it
the
doesn't.
contract with the
But if it's in the broker remote, then I would call Rob Quinn immediately.
Yeah,
Because in the broker note, like I had a situation where they said they were taking basically all the landscaping in the broker note remarks. And then I asked him, I'm like, you're not really taking all the landscaping, right? And he's like, well, that's dramatic. And then just like him love around it, but then wrote up that he was only taking 2 rose bushes and a thing. So that would override the broker.
Yes,
It was like
that would
something-
override.
yeah.
Yes,
Right?
because it's in a contract, both parties have mutually agreed.
Yep,
If there's any further issue, I would also get Rob involved or Bobby and say, like, this is like what happened.
Yeah.
I have documentation on it.
and honestly, if you're ever questioning anything, I would just write up, put it in the contract, because it's better to be in writing and signed, so that you know that both parties have acknowledged whatever it is taking place.
And then you can always refer back to it too, and then you have the upper hand. Like,
Yes.
Actually,
They
No,
signed
yeah.
on, such and such date that this is gonna happen.
and I never had my document. from you, so that's really great.
Yeah,
I can be a little shocked with that.
okay, so that, we kind of talked about the buyer timeline. So we're gonna kind of talk a little bit about the seller timeline, which is, it's different than the buyer timeline, right? With buyer timelines, the list is more about deadlines and your list of steps and to-dos to meet those deadlines. So with sellers, it's gonna be more like informing them, right, what's going on. So with sellers, you wanna set the expectation, inspections are gonna happen on this date, you're gonna have to leave the home. Please set those expectations and have that conversation up front so that the sellers don't think, oh no, I'm gonna be home for the inspection. Have that conversation maybe during the listing presentation or something, setting expectations up front with it.
And with the inspection, like a really great way to like let them know what, because they'll be like, well, why can't I be here for the inspection? Like some people want to know everything because they're control freaks and they just want to make sure it goes okay. And the way I word it to those people that need to like want to be there is like, well, you don't want to be there. And then they're like, well, why not? And I say, well, because if you're there during the inspection, then you're liable if this deal like falls under contract, you're liable to disclose everything you heard about your home when, like, if it were to fall out of contract.
So
So
that's a great
you
point.
don't want to hear what's going on because then you're gonna have to disclose it all. It's better if you don't know about it. And I mean, it is.
It is.
because You don't want to disclose things that you didn't think, because sometimes there's things that like. You didn't think were a big deal because it's your house and you have to maintain it and do it all the time, and you honestly may forget about it. But then it comes up in an inspection and then you're like, oh yeah, what do you do?
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
When you have an inspection and there's tenants there, is it proper protocol to request the tenants leave or is
Yes,
it normal for
yeah.
tenants to stay there? So they should leave then.
Yep,
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, and plus the tenants could say things to the buyers that could freak them out. A lot of times tenants don't like property being sold because it means they may lose their home. Or there's concern around it.
yeah,
It's best for both buyer and seller for the tenant to go and not be there because they may even say things that are not true
Right.
because they're not in contract with this portion of the sale.
yeah.
I had the worst experience with it one time. They had a very impressive German Shepherd and like it was like a up and down duplex and the guy like kept it in a cage like at the very top of the steps. And like for the inspector, he had to inspect it and the daughter, I guess, used to live in the bottom unit and she tried to like come in during her inspection. She's curious. She's like, oh, I used to live here. I just got kicked out. I'm like, oh, I was like, well, this is an inspection for the like new homeowner. I was like, so I asked her anything. She's like, well, I'll be upstairs. My dad lives up there. I'm like, oh, okay. And then like I was like, well, he had agreed that we can come up for a day inspection. She's like, no, absolutely not. She's like, he's a very aggressive dog. You can't go up there. So like we couldn't finish the inspection.
Yeah.
Like we went to go walk down to the basement and like I'm not even kidding you, I stood on top of the table in the basement because I thought that dog was gonna come downstairs. Like it was so aggressive
Oh, that's,
and it was terrifying. So
Yeah.
that's your
I've also had aggressive tenants at home inspections, in Lakewood. I actually had to have Lakewood police with us during the inspection of a duplex. Because that was our second time trying to get in for the inspection. When home inspection was the inspectors and, they left radon in the basement and someone destroyed their radon thing, which was like, that's like a $3,000 plus
Yeah.
piece of equipment. It doesn't look like much, but it is. So it is best for everybody if the tenants are not there.
absolutely. Absolutely. So timeline for sellers, just a couple questions to kind of ask yourself. What does your seller need? What do they need to know? what do you need to know and do? And then what does the rest of the team need to know? And then what are you doing at each step to kind of bulletproof it? And mainly it's communicating with the sellers, it's communicating everything, when the inspection is, when the appraisal is, appraisal came back, just explaining the process to them and making sure that, you know, you're kind of keeping them up to date with everything. So these are kind of both the timelines. And then interaction points with sellers, communicating deadlines like we talked about, communicating the contract to other parties. And then with your sellers, you know, there's a lot that you can do to still be that expert for them. So you're gonna be, so let's say things came back in the inspection, you're not gonna have them find their own contractors. You know, give them referrals of contractors like, hey, you know, X, Y, Z. And I usually try to look at my inspector report or look at the ROC that comes over from the buyer's agent. And I'll say, I try to contact my contractors to find out how much some of these things will be. So that way, when I call the seller, I can say, hey, here's what they're asking for. It's gonna be about X amount of dollars. Do you?
Yeah.
Do things?
And I prep them, like when I make that call after we leave the inspection, like, hey, I just want to let you know we just left. The inspection didn't go great. There's a couple of things, and I won't tell them because sometimes it's like better to not unless they ask, but I'll like, or, oh, it went great, you have nothing to worry about. That way, like, you kind of have to mentally prepare yourself,
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
especially as the listing agent, like, there was a lot there, and I just want to let, or like from the buyer side to tell the listing agent, like, I just want to let you know, like, there was a lot there. I think we're gonna be okay, but I just want to give you a heads up that my clients are gonna be asking for some things. And even if you don't tell them what it is, this way they can mentally prepare for this like ethically awful ROC.
I'm always nervous up until the inspection. So like, I appreciate when agents call me and at least say one way or the other, so I can mentally be like, okay, so now I can expect something, or "Whew, everything went great." But then I try to be, you know, the problem solver with my sellers, and I try to at least find out exactly how much all the repairs are gonna be.
Yeah,
Because a lot of times they sound worse, but then when you talk to a contractor, you're like, oh, it's going to be like $500, easy peasy. You can call your
Yeah.
client and say, hey, this is what it is. It's gonna be about $500, not a huge deal.
and even if you can get a quote to present to the seller.
Yes.
So that they can see like, oh, well, this person's saying it's only gonna cost this, and that's what those extra days in the timeline are like brought down for. So like, let's say the mains and plumbing stack is broke, that's an expensive repair, it's probably like $1,000 or more, depending what the problem is. But getting a person in there to say like, this is a plumber in there to say like, this is like the problem, this is where we're at, this is how much it's gonna cost. They can see a realistic quote, and then you can say, look, like, maybe the buyer's willing to like, just take the money
Yes.
and do it themselves kind of thing too, so you never know.
Yep. And then sometimes, oh yeah, you're fine. And then sometimes to kind of just, like, sometimes sellers can get a little like weird when it comes to when you're presenting like what the buyers are asking for. Always take it back to the big picture. Are they really gonna walk away, or are they really going to get upset over $500, you know, when, you know, let's say their offer got accepted at 10,000, like always paint the bigger picture for them so that it kind of helps ease their mind a little bit. Okay, so, and then this was the same, like, same with sellers as with buyers, you know, it's just a communication or a document, truly, you know, to cover yourself and to make sure that both parties acknowledge it. A lot of things are usually going to be documents, so sending it through DocuSign, who's gonna be following up, and is there a template that's already available for it? Okay, so Command, if you're not familiar, and if you guys are, we have a lot of different ways that you can learn Command. I know Linda does some trainings and things like that, but Command will actually automate keeping up with all of these timelines through opportunities. So you can track the progress of your transactions and opportunities. You can set up client updates and checklists and opportunities, so that way you can use Command to make sure that you're staying on task. It allows you to track everything involved with the transaction, from activity checklist to offer management, and then potential commission income and control. So I urge you to, you know, get some training on Command. You can really use the opportunities in Command to help create those timelines for you and to make sure that you're kind of staying on track. So any questions, ahas, or anything that you guys want to share, if living in legacy, if you guys want to take yourselves off mute and ask any questions before we move on to the next portion, feel free. I'll wait a few minutes. Does anyone in here have any?
Alicia Barton has a comment.
Okay,
I have a PDF of a cost guide from Pillar to Post, the inspectors. And it's got a range of like how much, normal repairs go for on a house these days. And it's really helpful after the inspection to show to the buyers so that you can negotiate the ROC better. So you don't have to get a professional in there.
oh, that's awesome.
Just remember though, if you're on the seller side with that, prices are a lot more expensive than they were a couple of years ago. So if you're on the seller side and they have to make the repair, I would maybe just like call a couple companies and just like
Yeah,
verify
confirm
that.
it. Any other comments or questions before we move on to the next portion? Okay, so we're gonna go on to best practices and risk avoidance. So we're gonna talk kind of where the deal could be vulnerable and how you can protect it. Do you have a story of like when a deal fell through? Sure. I'm actually going through it right now, but do you want to share a story? And like kind of what you learned from it and like, how did you fail forward to improve your product?
Do you have one?
I do have one.
Good, do you want to share?
Yeah,
Okay.
so, the guy was really excited, he was pre-approved, put the offer in, it was accepted, the agent was thrilled, and it had it on the market for a while. And then the loan officer would not respond to my client's call, so I actually, switched him to Noah because we're under contract and this needs to get going. And Noah started looking at everything, like, I don't think this guy really did his job, and so started finding some holes. So Noah was actually an amazing advocate for my client, because he was like, hold up on this appraisal till we get our ducks in a row, and so just navigating with the selling agent who was very impatient. We did the inspection, but we did not do the appraisal, and then the guy decided, my client decided like they had everything all set up, he was like adopting kids, so it was like really messy, but then he decided not to show up to work. And it was like, you kind of, and like, but like the cool thing was with Noah, that's new, but Noah like called him like, how'd your first day of work go? Which was really just an undercover call to make sure you went. And he was like, oh, I'm excited not to start, I'm gonna try something new. So it just made me, like, it really just reiterated, like, following up on everything and just communicating with the selling agent, like, listen, we're running into some hiccups and this is what we're gonna do. And then just trusting the experts on the teams around you of like, like Noah caught that, like that was all him, but like just training me things I need to look for in red flags, and
Yeah.
obviously the deal fell hard and he was furious.
But and we're gonna talk about this, but not all, and some deals, like, they shouldn't go to the end and,
Yeah.
and that's okay. You're gonna have deals that fall apart. I'm actually going through one right now where, it has been extended. So I representing the seller, and the buyer had to extend the closing date twice. We're supposed to close on Friday, and we just found out that they're not able to get home insurance, so they can't get lending because, the entire home is not into electrical. So and so I was trying to navigate that by saying, okay, I started calling insurance companies that, we work with, and I'm like, hey, is this true? Like, what's the workaround? There are some workarounds. So now we're seeing that like the buyer is just kind of finding reasons, and granted, part of it is valid, but not all of it, but to not go through with it. So I mean, what I'm learning is obviously like communication, but when we've been extending it 2 different times, like instead of, asking more questions, finding out like, are your buyers like getting cold feet? Are they scared? What's going on? Are they really still wanting to get this to the end? Because now we're gonna have to relist in a completely different market than what we sold it in 2 months ago. So it's just, you're always learning, like, no matter if you're new or a couple years in, like, things go and things happen, and it's what you learn from it. And what I'm going to do next time is looking for red flags, like, you gotta find those red flags and question them and ask a lot of great questions.
My example is actually going to be knob and tube. So it's probably the most frustrating thing is when you hear a buyer say, oh, well, I can't get insurance for knob and tube. Well, excuse my shit, but or in French, but bullshit. Because we live in Cleveland, Ohio, and I'd hate to break that buyer's heart, but I would guess that 60 to 70% of the
Mhm.
homes in this area probably have knob and tube, and they have had no other issues closing. So if you have an agent that presents that to you, I would probably get a little tough on them and say, oh, really? Have you been to Lakewood? Have you been to Cleveland Heights? Have you been to Shaker Heights? Have you been to West Park? Have you been to Parma? Like, all of these cities have homes that just like probably had lead-based paint in them at some point, they probably have or had knob and tube. And if they still have it, some electricians will even tell you that knob and tube is just as fine, sorry, no,
No.
any other
This was for-
electrical, like any other electrical in the house, as long as it's in good condition. So for someone to say that, no, Liberty Mutual offers insurance that they will insure knob and tube as well as other companies. There is no way that 60% to 70% of the homes in Cleveland, Ohio do not have knob and tube. So if that's what their objection is, then they need to find a different insurance company. And I know that Liberty, because Wayne Cruz is there, I know that they do that. So don't let somebody tell you that,
They can't get,
yeah, no.
and it's probably.
I had a deal ballpark because of that, so that's best.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, you're just always learning,
Yeah.
and those situations, one, make you more knowledgeable, because now you're way more knowledgeable on that, you know?
You that, no.
But that was actually very, interesting. So I mean. I'm literally going through this right now, so things are going to come up and happen, So, okay, so to avoid risk, communicate clearly and often with everyone. Copy assistants who are who are, involved, copy everybody, making sure you're setting expectations up front. Do you need the inspection response the next day? Be sure you're communicating, again, communication. And then maintain your professionalism throughout. Things can get heated and
Like I just did.
just making sure that you're kind of, staying professional, especially when you get that call that's like, hey, we're not gonna be closing on Friday because you.
But the professionalism is huge because like we all know,
Yeah.
like once you've done enough deals, you know the agents that you never want to work with
Yes.
ever again. And that you don't want them to think that of you. You want to have the reputation of you guys, or like I have one with Rich Gannon right now where there's like, you want to work with these people. Like, you're like, yes, I'll do a deal with you. And
Absolutely.
like,
And
you're
it
like,
helps when you're in a multiple,
yeah.
you could be in multiple offers and an agent might be like, hey, this offer from an agent that I'm familiar with, it's gonna go really smooth, it could
Especially
help.
if you have two of the exact same offers, like, I'm probably gonna say, like, I don't know this agent, I'm not familiar, I had a horrible deal with this agent.
Yes,
It may be, but, and you're not talking bad about an agent, but you're saying that, like, I know that, like, this may not be the smoothest route for us to
Yes.
go.
and smooth is important. And I will say, like, this situation that I'm going through right now, the agent and I have actually communicated, and she's been very respectful of like, I totally understand how you feel. Even through the, pushing back the deadlines and things like that. She has been very gracious with me and vice versa. And we're kind of we're both like, we have to do what we have to do for our clients, but we know what each other is going through and we can't. And I think and both of us know that.
We respect each other
And
and
we
like,
do, and I would be very excited to do a deal with her again, because I know that she's doing everything in her power that she can do. And anything that's being communicated is just because she has to for her clients,
and
but
think about it like this, when you're maintaining that professionalism throughout the deal. So a lot of times you talk about like the time that we have in a day, you have time designated for lead generating, you have time designated for showing homes, doing all the things that we all do. Do you know how much wasted time goes through the emotions of like, oh God, Yatra's calling, I don't want to answer her call, like, and then you pick up the phone and she makes you mad and you're like, oh, and you're just like upset about it. It's a lot easier to keep professionalism,
Yes.
not turn into the shark, but also like be an advocate. And I think there's a really easy way to do that Because like, you always want to be remembered for being nice, and it makes it easier on both you and the other.
Yeah,
And you're not wasting time with angry emotions.
right, and at the end of the day, it is what it is, like, if this
Right.
deal doesn't close on Friday, we're gonna close, it's just gonna be a different deal. And it might, you just have to change your mind, it literally comes down to mindset, you can't get angry about everything, things like that are gonna happen, and it's not the agent's fault, she can't control what her clients are going through, or what they're doing, and truly, it's not the client's fault, maybe the clients saw this and they're like, oh, I can't afford to fix all that, or, so just change your mindset about it, and that mindset, though, if you like, just kind of have that calming mindset, it does roll over into the seller, because then when you're talking to your seller, you're not sounding angry or irritated or frustrated, that calming is gonna calm them, and they'll be like, okay, well, what do you suggest we do? How
And then
do,
when that house goes on the market again, you're like, all right, like, we've got this. We're gonna treat it like
Yeah.
a brand new listing. Here's the marketing we're gonna do. You've been through this before, so you know what to do, like, and then it's just different.
and again, going back to problem solving, I reached out to all the agents that had clients that were interested before. We already have some showings going in there. So truly, it's another opportunity to look like a hero and saying, hey, this is happening, but this is what I've done. I'm actually getting some people in there tonight while we're figuring out the situation. So like, sometimes you look at setbacks as an opportunity to look like a hero to your client. And those are sometimes the opportunities that you shine the most. Okay, so we're going to take, again, if someone can set a timer, and then, we're gonna go with our respective market centers, and we're gonna talk about where deals can fall apart and some things that we can do to kind of help solve those issues, or that we can be proactively doing to not help those deals fall apart. So, let's break out into our market centers for 5 minutes. Sound good, Karen?
Gotcha.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right, I'll go back to the board.
Okay. Do you guys want to share anything you guys came up with? Legacy and living?
We just talked about preparing the client for what could happen and how we're gonna respond, because we don't wanna just say, this is what could happen. We wanna say, this is what could happen, and here's what we're gonna do about it, because you're the expert.
Yep. Kind of all comes down to communication, just making sure you're setting expectations and communicating. See anything? Okay. So then real quick, so we talked about getting through rough patches, setting the deal up for success, but I know we talked about this here. There's some deals that won't close and some deals that should not close. So does anyone have any examples of a transaction, and, Element or Living and Legacy, feel free to chime in too, that, going to close was not the best interest of your client and you kind of, did your fiduciary duty and talked to your client about that situation and, kind of help them make that decision? I have not yet, but I can, okay.
So prior to being a licensed realtor, I worked at Ryan Homes. And I worked there from 2005 to 2009. So I worked like literally while the market was crashing harder than ever. And it was a rough market. I remember people walking in my model screaming at me because our base prices dropped by like 30,000 and they felt they lost that equity. But I will never forget, I was in North Ridgeville, and there was somebody who purchased the home. They're still into the home to this day. But they had 7 kids. God bless that. And so they had 7 kids and they were actually buying an estate home, which is their larger product. I don't know how much of those they still sell, but they were buying the new home while foreclosing on their other property. So they shouldn't have been buying this estate home anyways. To make their down payment on the home, they sold a Dungeons and Dragons game on eBay. And they ended up in what's called a balloon mortgage, which it's like a balloon. So you can picture like a hot air balloon with like rates and everything like that. And so definitely was not in their best interest financially to close on this home. And so I kind of we, with our manager, knew about all of this going on and kind of had the conversation are you sure this is what you want to do? You don't want to put this money towards your current house and keep it kind of thing. You really want to close on this house. And yes, it's what they did, but lo and behold, they're still in the home. And I know that because they market to them to this day, but not that I know if I really ever want to go through a transaction with them again. But they shouldn't have closed on that home. It was not in their best interest to purchase this huge home with a balloon mortgage, and they didn't have the money to buy it, but they made it work.
Wow.
So I guess the moral of that story is do the right thing, always do right, but also it doesn't hurt to step up to the plate and be hey, yeah, is everything okay? Are you sure this is in your best interest? Are you sure this is what you're doing? I know, right? It was original, I guess.
That's funny.
Yeah.
I had to do that
Crazy story.
also.
You guys, okay, share away.
I had a client that the title company calls me a day before closing and said, we are unable to reach your buyer to schedule the closing. And oddly, I had been trying to reach her also, and she was not answering. So I finally, on the day of closing, finally reached her. And she said on Monday, this was a Thursday, Monday, my mother had a massive stroke. I'm an only child. I have to move in with her. I can't buy this house. So, you have to show empathy. You have a responsibility to do what's in your client's best interest. And I was advised that I had to tell my client that you've signed a legally binding agreement. Unfortunately, I certainly understand your situation, but you should probably contact an attorney because you might get sued. You might, it's a terrible thing to say, but you've got to prepare your client for what what could happen if they back out of the deal. And so then my responsibility was to go and present this case to the listing agent, who was not happy at all about it. And we actually ended up getting her earnest money back. So
That's
it was
awesome.
a long road. It was an emotional road. But in the end, and she did end up buying a house like a year later. But still, you know, nobody wanted to see that happen, but it had to be done.
Absolutely. And doing the right thing probably kept her as a client for you.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
always remember that, you know, the clients remember these things, and you always do the right thing because it's gonna come back to you. So, okay, we are going to move on to referrals and reviews. So we're gonna talk about how you can turn your transaction into a client relationship that brings more business referrals and repeat business. So all these things that we're doing during the transaction, we are just showing, you know, what a great partner we are, what a great consultant we are. So all of our business is either repeat referral, repeat or referral. So clients that feel like their experience with you is effortless and special, they're more likely to come back to you, and they're more likely to refer you business. So Command has great follow-up programs and touch campaigns that you can leverage after a transaction to help you stay, you know, close to your clients. So the most important practice with referrals is, of course, to offer value, and then don't forget to ask for referrals. Do you have like a system you use to ask for referrals or anything?
So.
That's, we don't, I mean, pretty much, but I'm sure you are.
Yeah, like my whole business is built on referrals.
Yes.
And like, I've never bought a lead off of Zillow. I've never bought a lead. I've never
Amazing.
called for sale by owner. I've never called an
And
expired.
she's doing 16 million in business, so
So,
her brain.
so like, when it comes to like asking for referrals, I have this thing where like, if somebody were to call me and be like, and everybody that's in management, including yourself, I probably really have just close your ears. But like, if somebody were to call me and be like, hey, Christine, do you know anybody looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? I'd be like, no, like, I'm not, like, why are you calling me with this? Like, that's, to me, that sounds awful. And it sounds awful to make those calls, and it sounds like it would be awful to receive that call. I mean, like, just being honest, but I do follow up with my clients like regularly for referrals post closing, and it's nothing like that. Like, I'll call and be like, hey, like, I just wanted to check in and see how you are, like, how's the house? Or like, hey, like, blah, 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 like, I know you just had this baby, your baby finally, I'm glad we got you to the house in time. Or I'll stop by with like a little baby gift for them. So I do things like that. And the thing is that like, they'll always ask me like, how's the real estate market still? Like, is it still as crazy as it was like in the spring and still, and so it kind of, the referrals just come naturally that way, because I'm staying in their life. I'm friends with all of them on Facebook. Like, I'm staying in contact with them. It's just not in the like, hey, you bought in May. Do you know anyone looking to buy, sell, or invest in real estate? Because the rates are a lot higher now. Like, it's not like that. It's more of like, I want to be like a real person to them and somebody that they love,
Yeah.
and not just like.
So, but she nailed it. She's staying in contact with them. She's not just selling the house and then, you know, giving them their housewarming gifts and saying bye.
Right.
She's staying in contact with them throughout probably forever, you know?
So like, I know the next section is like post closing, like what what do I do kind of thing. So I do have like a very specific system, and I'm into like the heat of that, like this time of year. So one thing I do is everybody who bought a house from me this year is going to get, a hand painted ornament with their address on it and their last name. It's not too expensive to do. You can find them really cheap on Etsy, and everybody gets that on there. And then, so that's everybody that bought, and then everybody that sold with me, if they're still in the area or close by, or if it's both, a lot of times it's both. I have a couple local bakers that I know, and I'll hand drop off the ornament with the cookies. So if they bought Ansel, they're getting something a little extra around the holidays. So this is like post, my like busiest time of year for marketing to my sphere is actually like October through January. So I do that because most agents don't do anything this time of year. And so I really like amp it up, which helps. They say what you do today reflects itself 90 days from now. And so if I'm doing what I need to do today, I'm gonna have a busy spring and summer. So I do that. And then, so I guess like for my sphere in general, morphing into that, because now they're part of my sphere, right? So now I am marketing to them regularly in a friendly way. So like I said, I don't like to ask for business. I know that's the number one mistake all salespeople make, but I kind of like created this thing where like, I would rather come from a place of giving in my business. And we don't always have you don't think you always have the finances to like come from this place of giving. But if it's okay, I'd kind of like to say like what I do and like how it can be affordable, I guess.
Yeah,
And that is like, so it starts every year in October. I have what they call free family photo event. And I have everybody in my sphere, they can sign up for like 25 spots of like free family pictures. This books out every single year with past clients as well as friends and family who all refer me business. But what's brilliant about the family photo event is that I say, like, I'm giving these to you, like, this is a gift. Like, I'm giving everybody a mini session with my photographer. It's about $700 for the photographer. It's about $300 to book out the gazebo at Lake and Berea. And then we usually have like donuts and cookies and like little takeaways with them and cider. So all in, let's say it's like $1,200. I'm not paying $1,200 for this event. I'm going to have a loan officer with me. I'm going to have a title person with me and or like maybe a home insurance person, and they're going to help me with the cost of it. So to me, it may be free or it may be like $300.
Yep.
So that's like how I'm able to do that. So that starts in October. I have a friend who's a printer that is like ethically like one of my best friends. So he knows every year I want a jumbo postcard that's like half the size of this book to go in for Happy Thanksgiving. And I strategically make sure that he sends this postcard out. So it's hitting their mailboxes the Friday, Saturday before Thanksgiving up until that Wednesday before. And the reason why I'm doing it this way is because I want to be fresh on their mind when they're meeting with their friends and their family and whoever else is attending Thanksgiving with them. If anybody, this is where they're going to say, oh, I think we're going to move next
Yeah.
year.
we'll have the
Oh, we're
baby.
having a baby, surprise. Like, oh, we just got it. It's like, oh, well, I have this realtor. So now they're like sitting around like the table of family, and then they can like, oh, I just got her postcard. Let me grab it for you. Or, oh, you're a postcard out, but here's her number kind of thing. I'm top of mind for that big family get together. And the Wednesday before is the biggest bar night of the year, so they may be seeing friends out. Black Friday, that whole weekend, they are interacting with people, and I want to be top of mind right away. So then I do my like ornaments and cookies, and then I used to do a Christmas card, like postcard that arrived like same thing, like a couple days before Christmas, and like happy holidays and like that whole thing. But I've actually just started sending out a family like holiday card that says like happy holidays on it to everybody. It's a picture of me and my family or just my kids. And this is like something that most people only send to like their like best friend, but I'm sending this to everybody, even my past clients. And it is shocking when I started doing that instead. How many people now send me their Christmas cards? Like, oh, I got Christine's, I gotta send it to her.
Yeah.
And then how many people text me and say like, thank you for remembering us and sending or a call. So not only with all of these am I, except for the postcard, I'm like kind of like doing multiple lead generation as well. Like, so I'm having touch points with people. So all of it is touching people.
Yeah.
So boom, there's some lead generation. But people are like texting and calling after the Christmas card. So boom, there's more touch points. I'm staying top of mind throughout the holiday season. And then also with the family photos. So they are now posting those pictures as like their main Facebook picture, or that's their Christmas card. And somebody, a lot of people use them as their Christmas card, and people will say, oh, where'd you get that picture taken? Oh, I got it from my realtor. So, it kind of becomes like full circle and helps with business. I'm sorry if I'm talking too much.
No, I love it.
And then,
This is so great.
Like my last touch point, my last touch points are, I send what I call an object of value in January. So that might be your like cheesy calendar cards that everybody sends out, or post or notepads, or like sending them like an object of value in January. And then I used to do like in Christmas, I did like a tobogganing event, just like for friends and family, past clients at the Metro Parks, and that, like, while it sounds great, is an epic disaster. Like epic beyond, like it was a great idea.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, so now I do like a movie night in like January or February. Because like, we're all stuck in our houses, nobody's doing anything during those months, and if you have like kids, then you need to get them out of the house. And even if you don't have kids and like you want to make it more adult themed, like why not throw a party at like the movie theater? It's like super cheap to
It
rent out.
really is.
It's like $150 to rent out a movie
Love
theater,
it.
and people love it. And you can have lender sponsor, you can have like things going on, like little mini events or like grab-aways for them. It's like the most brilliant thing you could do. It sounds super expensive and like you tried so hard with these people, but it's not, and it will book up.
It will.
So.
And to her point, as whether you're new or not, I mean, talk to your title partner, talk to your inspectors, talk to lending. They will help you put some of these events together and help with the cost.
And they have budgets to do it.
They
It's
do.
part of their budget.
Talk to, home insurance and things like that. And a lot of them, if you say they can invite their clients, well, hey, now you're kind of lead genning into their database too,
Right.
So use your referral partners, to really partner up with them. Okay. Well, going along with the touches, that's actually what we're gonna be talking about, is kind of putting together like a 36 touch program for your past clients. So you're already doing this for your sphere maybe, but doing it for your past clients as well. So we were gonna just take some time to kind of talk about, so you have a buyer, they're in their home. What are some things that we can do for that first year what are some touch points? So we've given them a housewarming gift. What are some other things that you do or that you think would be valuable for you to touch point with them throughout that first year? And living in legacy, feel free to jump in.
Birthday or anniversary.
Birthdays or anniversaries, we said.
Definitely house anniversary, right?
Yeah.
Yep, house anniversaries.
Sold properties in their neighborhood.
Yep, absolutely. I would keep those coming like every month, like so that they are staying up to date on the market.
And you're coming from a place of value.
Mhm.
What did she just say? What did she just say?
Anniversary,
No, about the community. What did she say?
current homes that have sold and things like that. Yep,
Sometimes we do seasonal touch points, like we did one in November for like haymakers in the area.
yep,
That's a good one.
that's a great one.
That's really ask them to respond and think of any more to add. So
Yep.
Yatra, we can't hear her.
Oh, she said that they'll do like seasonal ones. So like in October, they sent out one, haymakers in it around the area, things like that. So, any other ideas? So there's like care calls that you can do, equity updates. So keeping an eye of like how much things are selling for in their area, just like, Karen had said, but then saying, hey, you might have more equity in your home, how seem to be going up around this area. Community events, and then introducing them to dentists. If this is like a new area for them, you can kind of refer them dentists, stylists, things like that. And those are all great referral partners too, and great calls to make, because if you're in a community and you're selling homes in that community, I mean, partner up with some of the dentists, the hairstylists, mechanics, and things like that, because you're referring them to your clients.
And like community events, like it's really an easy, like, fun call to be like, hey, Atra, I saw like that there is a trunk or treat at downtown Brunswick. Do you and your kids want to come? Like, are you guys going? Because I think I might take my kids there. Like, I'm not really asking her to come with me, but I'm saying, I think I might take my kids there. Like, are you going? Because I'd love to see you.
Yep,
Boom. Touch point, you maybe get to see them in person, easy, friendly, and you're not asking for anything.
absolutely. And it can be a phone call, it can be a text, like, so these are just great ways to stay in touch with your client afterwards. So kind of try to think of some ideas, but you can do a lot through command as well, like putting together some sort of smart plan for that.
One thing that I've seen done that's really easy to do is if you sell in a lot in a specific community, go to the pizza shops and all the local places and pick up their coupons and provide that
Oh.
to them. Put it in a card and say, hey, I was just thinking of you. Here's some places in your community you might want to try. They can't wait to see you.
I love that.
So the one thing that reminds me is like, if you don't have kids, because I know I've talked a lot about like kid-based stuff. I think I talked about this with you, is like, there's a trainer, her name's Tara, she's from Tampa. Her big thing is like flamingos and
Yes.
Tara Carter. And like that's her whole brand. But she talks about what's called your home base. So if you're in a community, if you want to sell a lot in your community, or you just want to be more active in it, or that's where you already do a lot of business, have a home base and like go there regularly so people see you. But then to like pile on top of that, I learned this from a home insurance agent where like you can go and like I've given Cafe Aroma and Bria because that's where I'm from. I do a lot of business, born and raised, like whatever. I'll go in there and I'll give the barista $100. And I'll say, all right, if you can make the first drink on every person's order on me, I'm just gonna be sitting there in the corner, but you can just give them my card and say like, here, your first drink, or your drink is on Christine over there. Like a coffee drink can be like $3 to $5, right? Or more. So like, I'm just like there coming from my usual place of giving, but like then people remember you. So you can even say, or post them like Bria Moms Discuss It, or like, hey, I'm sitting here at Cafe Aroma until whatever time. I'm giving away like free drinks until my $100 runs out. Come get your free coffee. Or text all your past clients like, hey, I'm going to be here from this amount of time. I gave Bryce $100. Like, come get a coffee on me. I'd love to see you.
I love that. And these are all just like easy things that you can, that you can be doing. Okay, so we kind of talked about things that we can do in the first year. So how about in like 6 to 7 years after your clients buy? 1, are you still touching them at that point? Yes. And then 2, how do your touches look a little different and why? So what are you doing after 6 to 7 years? You're obviously not talking about the rest. I mean, unless there's a new restaurant or something, but what kind of conversations are you having at that point? One thing to keep in mind, they say everyone moves on an average of 8 years. So maybe now you're kind of talking to them a little bit about, what the market's looking like. Like, are they looking to move, things like that? So that you're obviously giving them the value of their existing home, interest rate, things like that. And then hopefully you've been keeping in touch with them so you know their dreams from like the forward conversation. So, hey, I know your daughter is going to be graduating college here. Are you going to be making a change? So your conversations are obviously going to be changing throughout, from that first year to 6 to 7 years, but make sure that you're customizing, if you're doing in-demand plans for these clients, but that you're, kind of following them through their timeline of where they're at.
No, I think by then you should have like really gotten to know these people.
Yeah.
From all of their like touching. They should be comfortable with you calling. They should know like.
They probably know about your mini
They
session.
probably know a lot about you because of social media. And I think that's like something to like really like remember is that like personally, I hate Facebook and Instagram. I probably wouldn't be on it if I didn't have this job.
We say that, yep.
But I do it so much and I'm on there so much because I'm staying relevant to all these people. Because not because I want to annoy them like, hey, I just sold another house, look at me. because I want to be their trusted advisor, not just today, but in 7 or 8 years. So I'm continuing to stay relevant and letting them know that like I'm involved in it. And I think when you are on social media, you can almost treat it like your own mini CRM. That's what I do. It's like, hey, like I sold a house to Bobby Sue and I haven't talked to her in a while, so I'm gonna call her and just like, but I'll use social media first. So I'll be like, oh my gosh, I saw you got a new puppy. Like, it's the same type of calls for me, at least. It's just like, I'm staying relevant with my real estate. They already know that because we're friends. And if they're not on social media, like I really like that Tumblr. And if they haven't like been on in a while, say like, hey, I haven't seen anything, or I know you're not on Facebook. I just wanted to touch base and talk to you in a while. And like, you should be setting at least quarterly or biannually, whatever you're comfortable with. You should be time blocking that time to call people you already know. Like, I was a productivity coach, like I think 2017. And like, the one thing I found is that people hated calling their sphere the most. People would rather call,
Yes,
like, they would rather call for sale by owners that expire, but your clients are part of your sphere. And like, I'm sorry, but like, when a market changes, that sphere is gonna be what like helps carry you through. When I had my second son, Joey, I closed on 12 homes or sold 12 homes the next month. Not because I'm like amazing, but because like I stay in touch with these people all the time so that they're like constantly reaching out to me.
yeah,
So
they are your business.
yeah, the other stuff is good too. I'm not like hating on it. It's just, that's where your bread and butter is going to come from to make it stable.
Yeah, so I actually like had the biggest fear of calling my sphere, went full-time, real estate, a little while ago, and seriously, I hate, and my husband was always like, you have the best sphere because of my past job and like all the people that I work with and dealt with. And I had the biggest fear of calling them. But then we analyzed my business just a few weeks ago, and literally like 90% of my business has come from my sphere. So, so it's like, I make for sale by owner calls and things like that, because for me, it just is easier to cold call than pick up the phone and call, I don't know why. It's gotten a lot easier now that I realize that, it's not that bad, one, and it just isn't, but, it does, but a lot of our business comes from that, and it's so important, and in a market like this, a shifting market, that's what's going to keep us on top, is making sure that we're, communicating with our sphere, because for sale by owners and things like that, I mean, they're important, but our sphere is just what's gonna keep our business afloat. Yes, okay. So, and then sellers who move away, I'm not gonna ask. I mean, obviously, we know we still want to keep in touch with them. And why? Because they can obviously still refer you people in this area because they know people. And then you never know if they're gonna want to move back, or if they move where, let's say someone moves to Florida. You want to be their realtor of choice when they're like, hey, we're gonna be buying a new home in Florida. Sure, you can't sell them that home, but you can refer them an agent, and then you can get a referral fee for that. So don't always forget, like, and I, as a productivity coach, I'll have people say, well, a lot of and this was me actually, because I had a remote job, and a lot of people I worked with, and a lot of my sphere was out of state. And that was always my excuse. My husband, I'm like, well, most people I know don't live around here. But you should still be building that database with them, because they should still call you when they need a real estate agent, and you can refer them a great Keller Williams real estate agent, and get a referral fee for it. So, I mean, make sure if you know a lot of people out of state, don't think that those people you're gonna skip by on the DTD2, or, when you're calling your sphere. Keep in touch with them and keep a strong relationship with them just as much. Okay, so, we'll talk a little bit about co-agent follow-up. So how many people actually, like, once your deal is closed, do you keep in touch with that co-broke, or, are you kind of just parting ways and done? Okay. Okay, so here's some reasons. So we're gonna really talk about why it's important to stay in contact with the co-agent. You can actually build your business and downline with co-agent relationships. And, you know, you never know if another deal is gonna come up and you had a great deal with them and, you know, let's say you have a house, a buyer that's interested in a house and you see that it's an agent that you work with. You're probably gonna have a better chance in a warmer conversation when you call that agent and they're like, oh my gosh, I remember working with you, or we've kept in touch. Or if you have a great experience with a co-broke, I mean, seriously, talk to them about Keller Williams, because I know you guys learned about profit share in another one of our classes, but anyone that you guys bring to Keller Williams and they say that they're here because of you and they're in your downline, you will make money from profit share for them. So it is, you know, keep them in your database and stay in touch with them. I mean,
You know who's really good at this is, they're not with Keller Williams, but the Salem team.
okay,
I used to be roommates with the wife and Jackie, and, they own a big team based out of Westlake. And, like, I've known them for years, and every deal I close with them, like, and I know them well, I still get a thank you letter from them, like, hey, it was really great working with you. Just like a handwritten note that's like, and I know they send it to everybody, it's not like.
but you just do feel good about it.
But you do feel
Yeah.
good about it, and like, if they're sending that to everybody, think about a year ago, or like 9 months ago, when the market was insane, and
Mhm.
people were literally bidding like $100,000 over to get a house. And like, you have an agent that like writes an offer that sent you that card, and you did have a good transaction with them. Or even like you didn't, in their card, like, hey, let's hope for a better one next time. I really enjoyed you and your professionalism.
Yeah.
Like, when you have, you're gonna remember that card that they sent, and you may think to yourself, even though that transaction blew up, that was really nice of them, and like, maybe I should give them another chance. Kind of thing. And like, agent relationships are huge with like, not necessarily like your sphere, but like they're huge with like making things happen and like getting it done.
Absolutely. And I will say, I mean, as a listing agent, like obviously, like I do get excited. I'm like, oh yes, this is the agent for that buyer. Or even as a buyer's agent, when I'm looking at the listing, I'm like, sweet, it's Christine Stowell, I'm gonna give her a call. Like, it just makes the process so much easier. And if you've had a great transaction, why not stay in touch with that agent? And you just never know where your paths could cross, you know, at whether it's with a house, or maybe they're looking for a new broker, or whatever the case is. It's really no different.
And it
And-
makes the process
It
easier.
does.
Like, I just, before this started, requested a showing on one of the Art of Real Estate listing. I didn't know the listing was only live for 90 seconds, and Erin Boomer texted, she's like, oh, but it like already starts off the like,
Oh, yeah.
we're friends. So like, it already starts off the thing, like, oh, like, I had no idea that I'm leaving here to go show her listing. But now that I know that I'm going to go show Erin's
You're
listing,
getting more excited.
I'm like, all right, like, let's do it. Like, I know we can do this, like, my people need to move fast, and I'm like, hell yeah, or heck yeah, or Brewer or Smith or whatever she is now, like, I know that like, it will be a good transaction,
Yeah.
because I've had rough transactions with her too, and like, as long as you're cool, like, it wasn't us, you know?
And again, it's the clients and you're just, yeah. Right, there was one other. Oh, and you never know, and this has actually happened. You might have a great relationship with an agent who mainly works on the east side, and they're like, hey, you know, I had a great transaction with you. I have a client out in Brunswick. Would you mind showing them houses? And, you know, if they buy, that is your client. Or like, so you just never know where that relationship is gonna go. So it doesn't hurt to keep the relationship, sending them a thank you letter, or touching base from time to time.
Yeah.
So. And so that is kind of, that's all we have for getting to the close. The rest of the time, like, it's spent for you guys to kind of reach out to past clients and your sphere. But do you guys have any questions, or is there anything, you know, in living and legacy, feel free to unmute yourselves, that we didn't answer, or anything that you guys want us to kind of go over a little bit more in detail? Okay.
Well, okay, what would you do, because, all right, what would you do to get back in touch with the past clients who you haven't spoken to in years? Is it silly at this point?
No, call
What
them.
would you say? What would
Because
you-
what's it called, when an agent doesn't follow up, they're
They're,
hopeless?
or orphan
Or they're
clients,
orphan
they're orphan
clients.
clients, so honestly, they're orphan
Orphan
clients.
So an orphan client is when like, let's say me and Yasha close the deal together. And I know that Yasha never follows up with her clients. She's like, one and done and gone. Well, as an agent who loves the follow-up, that's a really great chance for me to start marketing to them and me to swoop into them
Yeah.
and take that client from Yasha. Not that I would ever do that.
No. But I actually had a co-broke on a deal when she went to pick up her sign from the house that my buyer brought her a bottle of wine. And I'm like, that's a great idea. I'm like, good for you for doing, so and to call a past client, no, even if it's been a while, just pick up the phone and say, hey, it's been a really long time. You've been on my mind. How's the house going? How's everything going? Is there anything I can get for you? Isn't it? I know, I was like, wow,
I love it.
damn. Yeah, when you go.
The other agent sucks, but the other agent.
Like, if you go pick up your sign, what a great opportunity
Yeah.
to make yourself known to that client.
So you should start following up with them like ASAP.
I would, and to your point, like, even if you haven't talked to them in a long time, just that's your mindset, take that out. Cause how many people, what if someone called you after 3 years? Maybe for a second, you're gonna be like, this is kind of weird, but
And use their Facebook to make it normal. Like,
Yep.
I'll find them on Facebook. And
see
be like,
something recent.
yeah, like,
and-
oh, you had a baby. Oh, you just got a puppy. Oh, I'm so sorry. I saw your mom died. I just want to check in and see how you're doing.
Yep. Try to do a little bit of research on them like that and just call them.
The dying ones.
Anything else? Any other questions or anything we can kind of talk a little bit more about? Was this helpful?
Yes.
Awesome.
Sorry, I talked too much.
No, you're on. You added so much value. Thank you so much. We are all done. Thank you, guys. Bye, guys. We're gonna log off.
Bye.
Never.